here. People seem to disregard it was the president's inspector general, the one he selected, that said there's an urgency here and there's some credibility here for concern. The Democrats didn't create this.
Oh, no, they didn't create it. And good evening, Al. Good to talk to you as always. I think the transcript of the phone call is everything people need to make their own conclusion. I judge it to be insignificant. Now I would like to see the transcript of Thursday's hearing at the House Intelligence Committee that went on for 8 hours, from which there were selected bits leaked, but the entire transcript should be made available because Special Envoy Volker completely destroys, according to Mark Meadows and others, the idea that there was a quid pro quo. So I'm calling on Adam Schiff to do something he has not done for 3 years, which is act honorably, and put forward the entire transcript of Thursday's hearing so that you and I and everybody else can read what happened in front of the House Intelligence Committee and judge whether or not there's an impeachable offense. It's all impeachable offense is whatever a majority of the House says it is. I don't think it's an impeachable offense.
Michelle, you says that there's nothing there. Even though we haven't seen the whole transcript of the call, but that Volker destroyed the Democrats, even though we haven't seen that.
Well, and I don't think right,
there.
and that's a highly suspicious reading of events during that hearing, and you certainly are not. That's not a bipartisan conclusion coming out of that hearing. In fact, what you're hearing from Democrats is that Volker's testimony, and particularly the text messages that he released, are extraordinarily damning. They show that the person who was essentially acting as the ambassador to Ukraine, because Trump got rid of the other ambassador for not being a party to his plans, he was basically texting and saying it is crazy to withhold aid for political purposes. But we don't need to rely on that. I mean, we have the transcript. And so it seems like this is what Republicans are doing. They're either trying to deflect to attacks on different tertiary characters, whether that's Adam Schiff, whether that's Hunter Biden, or else they're telling you that the evidence in front of your face doesn't matter, right? I mean, we all saw that line. I'd like you to do me a favor, though. That favor had two parts. One part was to investigate, open an investigation into Joe Biden's son for the express purpose of Donald Trump then being able to say that Joe Biden is under investigation, as he was able to say that Hillary Clinton was under investigation and use that to undermine her candidacy in 2016. The other thing he's trying to do is push forward this ludicrous conspiracy theory that it was somehow Ukraine and not Russia behind the hacks on the Democrat in 2016. And it is astonishing to see all of these Republicans, erstwhile Cold War hawks, going along with this story.
You said you don't believe that it raises to the level of impeachment. If the President of the United States held back military aid that had been approved by Congress to try and get the investigation of a potential opponent's family, you do not think that rises to an impeachment, or you don't think they've established that that is what happened yet?
Very perceptive, Al. I don't believe they have established that. And I also like to point out that the President of the United States has used American national power often to achieve investigatory ends. For example, when we sanctioned more than a dozen Saudi Arabians in connection with the murder of Mr. Khashoggi, we use national power instruments often to obtain cooperation with foreign governments in matters about which we are concerned. I'll return to the original proposition, Al. If the Democrats have a case, Adam Schiff should release Thursday's transcript. It allegedly establishes a quid pro quo. Adam Schiff released the transcript like President Trump released the transcript of his call with President Zelensky, and then we can see. But what I see thus far, and I disagree with Michelle's reading of it, is not it.
I'll have Michelle respond. When you talk about Saudi Arabia and others, it was not to the personal gain of the president. We're talking now not about using foreign governments for investigations. We're talking about directing an investigation that will directly be of political gain to the president. That's a total different ballgame.
We disagree that that's been established. I don't believe that.
Well, I'm not I'm saying that you say it is established. I'm saying the examples you use is not what we're looking at here, Michelle. There was nobody in the Khashoggi situation that was accused of having political gain from wanting.
So I would say two things. What Hugh Hewitt and other defenders of the president are asking you to believe is that the president is independently terribly concerned about nepotistic corruption. And I cannot imagine that any honorable person can say that with a straight face. I mean, there is no other case in the world in which he has shown the slightest concern with this issue, and meanwhile his own daughter sits in the White House and does business with China every single day. I mean, it's absurd on its face. And to even equate it, again, with Khashoggi is to suggest that this conspiracy theory that Ukraine and not Russia was behind the hack of the 2016 election, or that Ukraine somehow framed Paul Manafort, who is now in prison for evading taxes on the money that he stole from Ukraine. To equate that with Khashoggi, with his murder that we all know actually happened, I think is just a sign of how much the Republican Party has given into a strategy of total deflection and really Soviet-style disinformation.
There are some on the Republican side saying that this is a coup. Isn't it the opposite of a coup to make sure that if the inspector general appointed by the sitting president says there's a serious concern, the system and government has to function? It would be a coup for them not to function or to give a pass when they've been given this red alert from the inspector general?
Those of us who always believed it was Russia who attacked our election in 2016, and I was among the first, as many Republicans were, to point out that WikiLeaks were the GRU front, have never altered that. We are still very concerned that what happened in 2016, the counterintelligence investigation that was launched against President Trump and his campaign over an alleged collusion that Mr. Mueller is determined did not occur. The one conclusion we can take from the Mueller report is that there was no collusion. We believe that we ought to find out why that counterintelligence investigation was begun. That leads us to the mysterious Professor Mifsud. I hate conspiracy theories, but I'd like to see Mifsud testify. And I believe we should all wait for John Durham, the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut's report, and Attorney General Barr's report. And I also think we ought not to mischaracterize other people's propositions. I am saying one thing and one thing only. If Adam Schiff is a man of integrity, he will release the transcript of Thursday's
You have not addressed my question of a coup, but Michelle, you want to respond?
I find it so extraordinarily hard to kind of have a debate. Of course, that's not what Robert Mueller's report established. Robert Mueller's report established that despite many, many meetings, despite the fact that Donald Trump's campaign asked for Russian help, received Russian help, and then took steps that were kind of considered positive to Russia in the aftermath of that. He said that despite all this, we cannot prove a criminal conspiracy. The report never, ever, ever said that there's no collusion. The only person who ever said that was Bob Barr, who is kind of bringing a similar level of dishonesty to this globe-trotting investigation that he's now undertaking, trying to undermine the entire basis for the Mueller investigation in the first place.
You've said here 2 or 3 times tonight you want Adam Schiff to release the transcripts, but aren't they in the middle of a series? They have witnesses coming in this week. Aren't they in the middle of a series of interviews? And this is not about just releasing transcripts for each testimony. This is about seeing if they establish what you claim they have not established. And why has not the president and the White House released the actual transcript between he and Mr. Zelensky, the head of state of the Ukraine? Not a summation, not this is what I said, and clearly say this is the word for word transcript. I'll release others that I put on another server, including Putin, including others in Saudi Arabia, because now we find that they put this on another server, something that he went into several kinds of crazy around Hillary Clinton. Why don't they just release everything that was on the server and release everything, the entire transcript with Zelensky? You're talking about Adam Schiff. That interview happened a couple of days ago. They've got all this stuff. Why don't they release it? Why don't you join me now in saying release all that right now, Mr. President?
Absolutely not, Al. I care about the office of the presidency. I believe that President Obama, President Trump, and the next president and the presidents after that, whether it be Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, ought to be able to talk to national leaders of other countries without fear that the national leader of the other country will not speak candidly.
But
they
should not be holding military aid and ransom and asking them to go after an opponent and then say, I'm going to hold the evidence.
Well, I just don't think he did that. And if we did do that, let's see Thursday's transcript.
Then why don't we release all the transcripts and find out? Inquire